All right, well, good to be here. Again, my name is Greg Hansen. I'm a warning coordination meteorologist at the Weather Service in Boulder. We're bound at the hip with Boulder OEM. They let us go first because we cause all the disasters and they come along and clean it up. So I want to talk today about the burn areas. One thing I learned today is we should call them burn areas, not burn scars, because burn scars have another connotation. I was Googling for some images, used that term and got something entirely different. So burn areas is what I'm going to try to go with from here on out. So why is this important? Why are we talking about this? And it goes back to what we see with a healthy forest versus one that's been burned through. And in a healthy forest, we've got the forest canopy over the top. The leaves and the healthy trees will intercept rainfall. This is about the rainfall. So it reduces the amount of water that actually reaches the ground or slows it down. The trees catch it and then it drips more slowly. You got the layer of duff on the forest floor, the pine needles, the leaves, the organic matter there that also absorbs water and slows down the runoff when the water does reach the ground. And then you've got all the roots and the vegetation there also slowing that rainfall and runoff, but they also hold everything together. So with all those systems in place, we've got, it takes a decent amount of rain, even in the forest, even if the slopes are kind of steep, to cause flooding and flash flooding. So with the fire, the heat from the wildfires will destroy these systems. So in this shovel, we've got an area here of burned over soil. You can see it's pretty loose, chalky looking. There's no organic matter in there. This up here towards the end of the shovel is healthy soil. You can see some roots in there. And so we change the soil when we burn it. And so that speeds up the runoff from the rainfall and it heightens that flood risk that we're here to talk about tonight. So why these are important also is the generation of this hydrophobic soil. If you're phobic to something, you're afraid of it. So hydrophobic soil repels water instead of absorbing it. So what happens during a forest fire is these organic compounds, all the pitch and the sap in the trees and all that stuff vaporizes in the fire. And that vapor, goes everywhere. And some of that moves down into the soil. And when it gets low enough in the soil where it finds a cool layer, it's out of the fire zone, it's that cool spot, those organic compounds that are vaporized condense onto the soil. And so we get a layer of that recongealed stuff, organic stuff, underneath that layer of ash and burned up soil that will repel water. It doesn't absorb it. It doesn't let the water get on through down to whatever healthy root systems there are or the deeper soil. So that water repellent layer is really what speeds things up. And we've got that layer of ash and stuff on top that, as Mike Shard likes to call it, that slop that comes down when we get some rain on it. All right, so moving on to what the Weather Service does. We're the warning authority for flash floods. By statute, that's our job, is to have people working 24 hours a day and watch the radar and look for heavy rain. And we do that as a team with all our emergency management partners, spotters in the field and that sort of thing. But we're the ones that push the button and issue those flash flood warnings. And it's kind of a trigger for a lot of other things. So we define a flash flood as a sudden rise in water from rainfall that requires immediate action to protect life and property. So that's a general flood is one you think of with the big rivers when they get out on the plains and it's slow to rise and slow to fall. You can kind of walk away from the flood zone with those. A flash flood is more that wall of water type thing that you've got to move right now to protect yourself and property. And so the flash flood warning is what we'll be issuing for this. Now, debris flows are fast moving landslides caused by the rainfall. So we don't have the skill and the ability to make the distinction when we see rain over a burn scar, if it's going to be a flash flood versus debris flow. We may put a debris flow statement in our warnings, but it's always going to be a flash flood warning you can see from us, whether it is just pure water or debris coming down. So the flash flood warning from National Weather Service is one of the things you need to be looking for. So what we're doing is after the fire, but before any floods might happen, so in the time period we are right now, we work with our partners to assess what that burn looked like, what it did to the soil, and how much it may have increased the flood threat. And so there's the BEAR teams, the Burn Area Emergency Response, if I've got my acronym right. That's a team, it's kind of led by the U.S. Forest Service, but it has a lot of moving parts to it. And they come in and assess just how severely burned the soil is. And so, the more severely burned it is, the more prone it is to run off more water than we're used to seeing. So they make that assessment, try to figure out, given a certain rainfall amount, how much more water is going to run off. So that's an important input.
I don't know how to comment or anything.
Yeah.
The next thing is the U.S. Geological Survey has a lot of expertise in debris flows. So they look at, the makeup of the soil, what's on the ground, and the slopes and that sort of thing. And also similar to the burn severity, how much water is it going to take to make the debris start moving. And then we're working with emergency management like this, doing outreach like this to help educate folks and let them know what to expect. And any local communities, we'll drill down to that community level as well. So a lot of partnerships, a lot of work goes on kind of behind the scenes as soon as the fire's done. And then as we're moving into our spring flood season. So from that, we determined some flash flood thresholds. So these are numbers that we've come up with that are going to be our triggers for these flash flood warnings. So we base those on the studies that were done, and we also talk to the forecasters in our office that have 20 or 30 years of experience in the area. We've dealt with burn scars in the past, and so our past experience also helps figure out these numbers. So what we've come up with is 35/100ths of an inch in 15 minutes, or 3/4 of an inch in an hour. And initially that's going to trigger our flash flood warnings. Those sound like low numbers, and they are. It's not uncommon to get 35/100ths of an inch of rain. But those are the lower end that's gonna just kind of start moving the soil, sloughing that ash layer off. And then as we get more rainfall, of course, the conditions will worsen. And then over the summer, as we get some events under our belt, we may get some of these rainfalls and it turns out nothing happened. So we will update these numbers. So don't be too stuck on them, but this is where we're going to start. But we are going to adjust them. And as the years go on, things improve. The first year is definitely where things are the most tender, but things recover, stuff starts to grow back, and that hydrophobic soil breaks down. But we're going to be in this for a good 5 years or so. We're still dealing with other burn scars in the area. All right, so then during the flood, we monitor things. Again, we have forecasters working 24 hours a day. We're always watching the radar. There's a vast network of rain gauges, really good in this burn scar area. Actually, we're pretty fortunate to have that. So we can calibrate what we're seeing with the radar estimates. If you've got a radar app and you like looking at those rainfall amounts, keep in mind those are estimates of the radar, and from day to day and weather system to weather system, those rainfall estimates change. So it's good to be looking at the rain gauges, and then we can calibrate what we're seeing on radar to what's actually falling on the ground. The radar is more instantaneous. The rain gauges give us a reality check on that. So when we hit those thresholds, we'll issue these flash flood warnings, and that will set off a lot of alerts and put some things in motion. We also have a flood advisory, a small stream flood advisory that we will issue, and that's for a lower threshold that there's more of kind of a heads up that things are going on. We see that there's rain in the area. It's not quite reaching those flash flood warning thresholds, but we want to let you know that we're watching it, kind of thing. Or if maybe a storm is outside the area going to move in, we'll do an advisory for that. So the goal is to give you some lead time. If we're tracking storms that are outside the burn scar area, we have some history of them. We know what they're producing. We know they're going to make it into the burn scar in half an hour. We can get some lead time on those warnings and give some advance notice. 15 minutes, half an hour is a pretty good number to expect. But we know in the mountains and the foothills, sometimes those storms develop in the terrain. They stay locked on the terrain. They don't move. And in those cases, they just go up and start raining, and we're off to the races. So, the deal with the flash flooding, especially from these burn scars, is it happens pretty much on the same time scale as the rainfall. So when we're talking about 35/100ths in 15 minutes, well, within 15 minutes, we're going to start seeing these water levels go up. So we're not always going to get lead time. You're not always going to have advanced warning. So we need you to be aware of your environment around you. Got some tips on that coming up. So Again, our goal is for lead time, but sometimes the flood and the warning may come at about the same time. All right, so what can you do about that? Well, be informed. You know, your knowledge, your personal knowledge and responsibility is one of the most important tools you have. So just be informed, know the forecast, know if today's a rain day. You know, pay attention when we start talking about the summer monsoon, when that moisture finally comes in. You know, those are the kind of things to know just what you're out for today. So, you know, if you're going to be working outside, playing outside in a flood prone area, just know what the weather's going to do that day. And then if you're in the river basin, know where your water comes from, what's upstream. Keep an eye on the sky up there. It may not be raining where you are to cause flooding. You know, the storm may be well upstream from you, and then the water comes down. So, you know where your water's coming from, know what's going on up there. Pay attention to, you know, that thunderhead building off in the distance. Is that in the basin that feeds the stream that you're standing by? All right, have a way to receive warnings. We're, of course, a proponent of NOAA Weather Radio. That's a specific radio you need. We broadcast that on a special weather frequency, so it's not your regular AM or FM radio. I've got a slide with a little more detail on that in a sec, but a NOAA Weather Radio is a good way to get alerts. When we hit the button in the office, the weather radio alarms are going off instantaneously. It's that fast, so it's a good, reliable way to get warnings. FEMA has a good app. It's on, you know, the Android, the Google Store, and the Apple Store for notifications and warnings. So that's a good way to go. And then Boulder County has a robust local warning system that they'll speak to a little bit more as well. So sign up for that. The point is here is just to not choose one. Have a number of ways to receive those warnings in case you're out of earshot of one, your cell phone's not working, your weather radio will go off. You know, you want some redundancy to that just in case. And again, those environmental cues, you know, we may not get that warning out in advance. That storm may build right over the top of you, or what we think is a weak storm moving into the area may strengthen right when it hits the border. So, you know, look for the thunderstorm, the rain upstream, watch the creeks and streams, look for rapidly rising water, look for erratic water. You know, if there's some debris in the stream channel that's building up water behind it and then releasing and then stopping and building up again and releasing, you may see pulsing water. You may see more debris, more stuff in the water than normal. So those are all cues to really be paying attention to what's going on. And then the most important one is have a plan. You don't want to be deciding what to do when this is going on. That's, you know, that leads to confusion. Have your plan before. That way, when you get these triggers, you just enact your plan and do what you've already thought about. So the plan is really probably the most important thing of all this. You know, in the last resort, climb to safety. You're better off wet than dead. Most flood deaths happen in cars, happen in automobiles, people driving into flood waters. It just happens over and over and over in our statistics. So unless you're really got the time to evacuate or evacuating uphill, you know, do not drive into floodwaters. All right, as far as notification goes, back to that, the wireless emergency alerts. So when we issue flash flood warnings, we can give them a tag of considerable or catastrophic, and that sets off your cell phone. Those are those wireless emergency alerts, like you get the Amber notifications, that sort of thing. That's a thing where you can opt out of those on your phones. Please don't do that. Stay opted in because, you know, those alerts may save your life. Again, it's when we think it's a considerable or catastrophic flash flood that'll go off, but that's a good automatic way to get notifications from us. The other one, back to the weather radio, this green glob here on the map here is our model of coverage. So, you know, we've got decent into the foothills, and then we start to get shadowed here. But if you're in an area that has weather radio coverage, that's a good way to go. Make sure a couple of features to get the tone alert feature. That is one where you don't have to have the radio on all the time. It sits in standby. Then when we issue the warning, the tone goes off and the radio wakes up, you wake up, and it gives you some good notifications. So that's a good feature. Also get the specific area message encoding, or SAME feature. That lets you set it up so you only get warnings just for Boulder County. We don't have quite the sophistication to do it to tone just for your area. It's county by county, but still that's a little better than you receiving warnings when we're doing, you know, hail in Weld County or something. So the same feature specific area message encoding lets you at least dial it into Boulder County alerts. And then Boulder County alerts themselves, boco911alert.com. We'll hear more about that in a sec, but a good way to sign up for their information. And that's where you're going to get your instructions as well, things to know about evacuation and aid and that sort of thing. All right, now I want to go on to more things on how you can help yourself to be aware of what's going on. And we talked about knowing if today's a thunderstorm day and that sort of thing. So just going to walk through a few features on our website and some resources for you to use. So the first thing is just the main webpage, weather.gov/BOU. This is our webpage on a pretty busy day. These are all the headlines, weather headlines that are in effect. This map here will have a map of any kind of watch, warning, advisory, whatever we have. It does get kind of small, you know, when you're really looking at Boulder County and the Cowwood burn scar. But you know, this will be lit up with colors and there'll be headlines over here. This was a busy day, so we had a situation report in effect. So that's something we don't do all the time, but when you see that, give it a look because today is going to be a busy day. All right. One of the first things to check out is this weather story. This is always here in this pane in the bottom part of the page, weather story. This is what we think you need to know. So it's an infographic we create several times a day of what's going on today. If today is quiet, then we'll talk about tomorrow. And through the summertime, we're going to have, when you click on that, you can have different tabs you can look at. And we're always going to have a tab for the burn scar flood threat. So even if today's going to be a dry day, we'll still have a burn scar tab that says today's a quiet day, take the day off. So that'll always be a good place to check initially to see what the flood threat is. All right, the next thing I want you to look at is the hazardous weather outlook. We always have these going. This is just a zoomed in part of that map and the headlines. Click on that hazardous weather outlook from our main page, or you can just type in weather.gov/BOU/HWO, BOU for Boulder, HWO for hazardous weather outlook. And this example then is a plain language forecast of what's going on today and tonight and then through day 7. So we always have this out. Good way to check just plain language, what's going to happen, what are we thinking about. We do this year round. It's for our spotters. So down at the bottom, you'll see a spotter activation note if we need them or not. But we'll always be talking about the burn area flood threat there as well. Next thing to check out is our area forecast discussion. This one we don't have a real easy link from the web page, but the address weather.gov/BOU/AFD for area forecast discussion. And this is always going to contain a hydrology section this summer. So we're always going to put a section in there, again, like that burn area tab on our weather story. If there's nothing going on, we'll say there's nothing going on. But if we think it's going to be a little bit rainy, we'll talk about, you know, what time storms will form, what's the expected rainfall amounts from those as well. So, you know, if I always say get your geek on if you're a fan of the weather, and you probably are because you signed up for this this session here. This gives you a look into what the forecaster is thinking too. So where that hazardous weather outlook is what's going to happen. This is the why things are going to happen. So there we'll talk about, you'll see comments about different computer models. We'll talk about our confidence in things playing out. If it's a high confidence day or low confidence day, you'll get a lot of insight into why we're forecasting what we're forecasting there. So check that out, weather.gov/BOU/AFD. And then get involved. You know, we want to know about what's going on. So if we're a little bit under those thresholds, you know, a 1/4 inch in 15 minutes is good for us to know, and that 3/4 of an inch in an hour. You know, tell us what rain is falling. That can help us calibrate our rain gauges. Let us know if there's flooding. Let us know if there's debris flows. If you're not around when it's raining, but you get home and you can see the creek got up to a certain amount, you know how much rain fell, let us know. That will help us calibrate what we're doing, what those thresholds are with what's actually happened. So those ground truth reports, you just can't beat them. You know, the radars are an estimate, the rain gauges do their job, but it seems like the rain never quite falls in the rain gauges. So human beings looking at stuff on the ground is really helps us do our job. So how do you do that? Well, we're on social media. So Facebook, we're NWS Boulder. You can give us a note there. Twitter is probably the better way if you're a social media person, at NWS Boulder. You can shoot us a direct message or just tag us in your tweet. and we've got people looking at that all the time. We also do the hashtag COWX, Colorado weather. Pretty much anything we post is going to have that on there. So follow that hashtag, follow us. We do a lot of good information that way. All our warnings are auto tweeted. They just go out automatically with the polygon, with the area that we've warned for. So that's another source for flash flood warnings from us. If you want to report something online, this link here, it's a little clunky, but inws.nsep.noaa.gov/report. Go to there, you can bookmark it on your phone. I've actually got it saved to my phone screen, so it looks like an app on the phone. It's mobile friendly, a really good way to report, and that comes right into our office. There's another app called MPing that you can do reports that way. And then a great citizen science program called CocoRaHS, started at Colorado State, and it's gone international now. But if you're a bit of a weather geek and you like to measure the rainfall daily anyway, get involved with them, cocorahs.org. It's a bit of a commitment, but it's really good data, and any reports that come in from that come right into our office as well. So they're very useful, very high quality data. We really like that. And then one more opportunity, if you want to learn a little bit more about thunderstorms and how they act in the foothills, we've got a foothills version of our spotter training session on April 20th. If you go to the website, weather.gov/BOU spot training, you can find more information there. Actually, if you just go to our homepage, weather.gov/BOU or /Boulder, there's a headline right at the top that has a link to spotter training stuff. So check that out as well if you're interested. It's another virtual meeting, but we'll train you up to be a spotter, give you the secret number to call the office on as well. So I encourage you to do that. And with that, Andrew, I'm finished. I will stop sharing, and I'm also happy to take any questions now or later on.
Great, thanks, Greg. Do we have any questions for Greg? As a reminder for those folks that jumped on late, we are recording this, and so we'll share that link online as well. So, all right, if not, and Greg will stick on with us, we can ask questions till the end. We'll move on to Kevin Doyle with Michael Baker and Associates to give a hydrology update.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Oops. Let me start sharing. Are we good?
We're good.
All right. Yeah, so Greg gave a lot of good information of how a burn area impacts the flood risk because the infiltration or the amount of infiltration that occurs goes way down. The interception from the natural canopy of the trees goes down, so you get more runoff. What we're attempting to do, we're working with Boulder County to predict what's going to be impacted by the various precipitation events that Boulder County could anticipate seeing this spring and in the summer. And we're doing that by creating an updated hydrologic and hydraulic modeling of the entire basin. So we're going to have a high amount of detail in the burn area, but we're also modeling all of the Left-Hand Creek watershed and all of the South St. Vrain Creek watershed. So we know how the areas upstream of the burn area interact with what's running off of the burn area. And really our focus is going to be on two things. One, how does it impact bridges and culverts? And two, what are the flooding extents from these various precipitation events? We're doing this for two reasons. One, and Greg did mention this, the importance of increasing the lead time of these warnings to keep people safe, but also to allow Boulder County to do more targeted warnings for who they anticipate will be impacted by these precipitation events. So in order to do this, what we're doing is actually using a somewhat newer technology that's called rain on mesh modeling. We take the watershed, the topography of the watershed that you see on the left, and we apply a mesh to it. And each one of those mesh points becomes a calculation point where we apply precipitation to it, and the model will calculate how much of that precipitation runs off and where it goes. And so we're going to run this model for a wide variety of precipitation events to bookend what we anticipate for the summer, but also bookend the low end of the National Weather Service's warnings. So we're going to start at a 1/4 inch over an hour and run it up to 3.5 inches per hour, and have a wide variety of storms that OEM can then look at. And if they get a prediction of a 1/2 inch of rain, they can look at our modeling and determine what we anticipate would be impacted by that 1/2 inch of rain in an hour. So the other thing that we can do with these models, which is great, is we can spatially vary the infiltration. So we combine this mesh with the infiltration of the ground. So typically, you've got a forest canopy that's going to have high infiltration. A roadway is going to have no infiltration. We can take the burn area and we can modify the burn area so it shows that area's infiltration is much lower than it typically was. But then what we can also do is we can look into the future, because we're going to start with the current conditions modeling, but we can also modify this infiltration layer and run models for a short-term recovery a couple of years down the road, or a long-term recovery 5 to 10 years down the road, and keep updating these models so that OEM has the latest information on what might be impacted by these storms. So again, the two areas that we're going to focus on for the impacts, one are bridges and culverts. Our model is going to have all private bridges and public bridges and culverts in the model, and we'll analyze when we anticipate those bridges and culverts will overtop. So again, if we show that 3/4 of an inch will cause a public bridge to overtop, OEM can notify people to watch out for that bridge to be overtopped. The other product that we are going to produce is it'll show the flooding extents anticipated from these various storms and the depths associated with those extents. And it'll show both what's called fluvial and pluvial flooding. So fluvial is typically what you see on a flood risk map that's riverine. So it follows the creeks and rivers, and it'll show that, but it'll also show surface runoff and surface ponding. And you can see in the image right here, this model will show where it's ponded up. So it'll show everywhere where the water is going to go in the watershed, and what we anticipate will be impacted by those events. And that's all I've got, Andrew.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Are there any questions for Kevin? Again, we'll have an opportunity at the end too. Next up, we have Charla Benjamin with Boulder County Parks and Open Space.
I'm Charla Benjamin. I'm an engineer with Boulder County Parks and Open Space. And I am one of the project managers on the recovery effort at Howell Valley Ranch. So I'm going to speak a little bit to the modeling that we've done to date to kind of anticipate the hazards and what we're going to do to mitigate those hazards. And I hope that this will be helpful to everyone in the South St. Vrain side of the equation. So we have, of course, severely burned areas, moderately burned areas, low burned areas. This is actually in Howell Valley Ranch, and we know that there's a lot of high hazard potential for debris flows and flash flooding there. So we have closed down that property to public access on the south side. Of course, the north trails, 10 miles of trails, are still open on the north side of Howell Valley Ranch, but on the south side, we still have that closed to the public. And that's because these trees that are dying will be falling over the next 3 to 5 years. And we have been removing the hazard trees along the trails and the roads. We don't want people to go off trails because we have stump and root holes and a lot of unstable and rolling debris. And it's slippery out there where you have a lot of the ash. So we've cleared, made 10 miles of trails available with some hazard tree clearing on the north side. And for now, the south side is going to remain closed. And we don't want these trees falling down on people's heads. So even staff need to be wearing hard hats when we go out on this property at this point when we're doing work. But I want to show this initial hydrology modeling that has been done to try to understand where the hazards are, where these flash floods might move, and where people might be threatened. So in this particular model that was developed by a technical assistance team there's a lot of professional, or the state has hired a lot of professionals to help with initial understanding of the hazards in all of the burn areas, including Calwood. So we were able to get this modeling from Ingenuity. And the really large red circles on this map are where we anticipate seeing the flooding, the worst flooding. And I'm going to zoom in on South St. Vrain in just a minute, but I want you to see that there's large red circles down there in Ohio Valley Ranch and very, very small circles over on the South St. Vrain area. So they actually have little red dots all over this map and showing like the relative hazard for flash floods. And then with those flash floods will come the debris. But the circles are much smaller on the South St. Vrain side. So we mostly have anticipated that you will see muddy water. The city of Longmont will close their water intake when that water is anticipated to come through. So we want everyone signing up for Everbridge just to be aware of what's going on. And the city of Longmont will be doing that to monitor. Well, they'll probably keep their water intake closed since it's not completely necessary to them. That's our understanding based on conversations with stakeholders. So zooming in on the South St. Vrain side of things, again, these are very small dots. This model is, or if it isn't already available on our website, I'll make sure that we have the link up there, but I think it's available. You can zoom in live and click on some of these dots and see what the anticipated flow rates and multipliers of post floods compared to pre-flood conditions. So really down in Ohio Valley Ranch, we might see 6 to 8 times as much water coming through there as what we had seen pre-fire. So post-fire, we have a large risk. These little red dots, if you click on them just for South St. Vrain, they're like 2.3 to 2.1, in some cases 1.1. So the post-fire flood risk is only a small, increased a little bit compared to what we're seeing on Gear Canyon and Left Hand Canyon. So I just want to say that there's relative risks here, and we have muddy water is what we mostly anticipate you seeing. But we are doing all the same modeling and increased products and tools for OEM on the South St. Vrain side as we are for Left Hand Canyon, so that we make sure that you get notified just as much as everyone else. So there, we do anticipate in the Central Gulch watershed that's going down to South St. Vrain that there will be debris flows happening. However, that's a very rocky, steep terrain. There's a lot of depressions, roughness that is going to capture a lot of those debris flows. We do not anticipate them moving very far beyond the outlet of Central Gulch watershed to South St. Vrain, other than muddy water. But CDOT is going to be doing some work there, and we know people live there. So we want to make sure you know all the hazards and you get the information you need. This is what we are anticipating doing for mulching. This is the entire burn scar. All these little polygons are green, blue, orange. We have some of these funded and some of these we're searching for funds right now, but this would be mulching. And mulching is the first line of defense to try to prevent much of the soil from moving down the slope. We want to break up those raindrops, break up that energy so it doesn't move the soil. So mulching, you'll see those operations from Lions, from that area. You'll see these helicopters. They're going to be dropping shredded wood down onto these areas. And so you'll probably see this activity, and this is why we are still going to be closed, or one of the reasons why we're going to be closed on Ha Valley Ranch on the south side. It's going to be a lot of activities this year. And we're going to be watching to see what the debris flows do. But we hope if the right circumstances help, that this will help with breaking up the energy, and the vegetation will grow in, and we'll start seeing that soil getting held by the roots and all the organic matter. But muddy water, that's what we anticipate. Some of these rainfall events, you'll see more water more often. And some of this, debris flows will happen and get captured locally, probably up high in Central Gulch where you will not see it. But that muddy water you probably will see. So it's going to impact watershed hydrology all over the burn scar. We will be having volunteer projects going on. We lost a lot of fence. We lost, a lot of signage on Ha Valley Ranch and a few other things. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for volunteer projects, and you can look for those. It's both this year and next year. And we have a website. I just want to refer you to that. It's bouldercounty.org, open space management, Ha Valley Ranch Calwood Fire Recovery. And we are also emphasizing what is said here in this presentation, that please sign up for Everbridge so you can know what's happening and all the other tools that are being mentioned. So thank you so much, and I'm done.
Great, thank you, Charla. Any questions for Charla? All right, we'll move on to Jessica Olson with Left Hand Watershed to give an update on partnerships and adaptive management.
Forgot the key component of unmuting myself and showing myself here. Okay, so thanks so much. This has been a great presentation so far. I'm Jessie Olson with Left Hand Watershed Center, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the gap area restoration that we've been working on. But first, let me tell you just briefly about who we are. We are a nonprofit organization that works to protect and restore watersheds for people and the environment using a collaborative and science-based approach. And prior to a couple years ago, we really focused only on the Left Hand Creek watershed. And 2 years ago, the board voted to expand our services to the larger St. Vrain watershed. So that includes the entire basin here that's shown on the map. And we've been doing work in the St. Vrain Creek watersheds for the past couple of years. So in terms of the recovery tasks that we've been helping out on, so we've recently received funding from Boulder Community Foundation to be able to cover some of these gap area restoration tasks that are not covered under the EWP project that Charla just explained about. And that includes some hazard tree removal and erosion control measures on both the left-hand burn scar, which is down here, and then also within the Calwood private property up on the Calwood burn area. So we're going to be implementing some seeding, mulching, and additional sediment control check dams on those properties prior to monsoon season. So we're getting started and hiring a contractor within the next couple of weeks. We're also focused on adaptive management. So we're looking longer term on the Forest River connections and looking specifically at the fire response within the river. And following that, once we have data that we've collected and understand where additional needs are in terms of erosion control measures and seeding and mulching, we're going to be doing additional actions to make sure that the soil stays on the ground. So one of our key questions is looking at is whether or not the sediment inputs into the stream are reduced or maintained. And so we're going to be measuring the physical response of that, looking specifically at the turbidity and sediment within accumulation within the stream. Also looking at pool areas, seeing if we are maintaining our pool area year to year. And then also looking at riffle quality. So within our riffle systems, that's the faster moving part of the river. We want to make sure the sands do not actually accumulate within that riffle. And then we're also looking at biological responses in terms of the fish population, vegetation, and benthic macroinvertebrates, which are the bugs that live in the stream. And fortunately, we have long-term data sets in Left Hand Creek with this information already set up. And so we're going to be collecting that post-fire again. And then also in the South St. Vrain. So we have some pre-monsoon data that we can compare to and see how things are progressing over time and what impact storms and monsoon season have on the ecosystem. So there's many funding partners and partners that were involved in the post-fire response. And these are our funding partners that are making that happen. So Boulder County and the NRCS EWP program, which is paying for the work that Charla mentioned in terms of the aerial mulching. U.S. Forest Service, City of Longmont, St. Vrain Left Hand Water Conservancy District, the Boulder Community Foundation, and also individuals and corporate donors have contributed to make this possible. So with that, thank you very much. And if you want to learn more about our activities, we are including citizen science components as well as volunteer stewardship events. We have an Earth Day event coming up, but I think that's fall, but we're going to be having other fire-related recovery volunteer events if you're interested. Feel free to contact me. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Any follow-up questions for Jesse? Greg, are you still with us? We have a question in the chat maybe you can help with. And it is, are there any predictions on rainfall and drought this year?
Yeah, so that's always the tough one, the longer range outlooks. The guidance I've seen, the outlooks have us trending still, a little bit above normal for temperatures and a little bit below normal for precipitation. Those are better chances for above normal and better chances for below normal for precipitation. So it's take that with a grain of salt. I will say, looking at next week, there's a good chance that we're going to get another slug of some upslope flow and some cold rain or snow in the foothills. So that is, I'm feeling optimistic about another layer of moisture up in that area. I'll also say that, we, between the March storm and if this thing materializes, I don't think it'll be as big as what we had in mid-March. But having moisture in the ground when we go into the summer storm season kind of helps that process. Drought leads to drought, and a little more moisture helps out with the other side of that coin. So, I'm thinking more a normal precipitation pattern this summer. Hopefully, it's a fine line we walk, because we want a little bit of rain to keep the fire danger down, but not so much that we get flooding from it. So hopefully that's the way it plays out. But I think we're looking at pretty normal precip.
Thanks, Greg.
Great, thanks, Greg. Up next, we have Steve Silberman with Boulder County Communications talking about emergency alert and warning.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, all right, great, thanks. Welcome, my name is Steve Silberman. I'm the director for Boulder County Sheriff Communications, and I manage the center that handles the footprint of all of your properties and within the Cowwood and the left-hand burn scar. What I'm going to talk about a little bit today is you've heard multiple speakers mention the alert and warning systems, and I'm going to be a little bit more specific and dive into a little bit of the operations and get you guys to understand what we're doing as a dispatch center for the information that comes back to us, reference weather that's coming your way. So I'm going to share my screen to do a quick presentation. All right, so who are we is my first slide here. There are 4 911 dispatch centers in Boulder County. The one that services the area of the burn area is Boulder County Communications, and that's our center. We dispatch for the Sheriff's Office, which is the law enforcement jurisdiction for the Calwood burn scar, and then also 6 other law enforcement agencies, along with 22 fire districts, 4 search and rescue organizations, and a partridge in a pear tree. Got a lot of organizations under our umbrella. Then there's 3 other dispatch centers in the county: Boulder Police and Fire Communications, who handle Boulder City Police and City Fire. Longmont Emergency Communications handle Longmont Police and Fire, and then the University of Colorado Communications handles the CU campus and CUPD. All 4 dispatch centers are on the same phone system and the same dispatch systems, so we actually back each other up with a very resilient hosted solution when it comes to the dispatching and alert and warning. How does our dispatch center use the emergency notification system, which is the initials ENS that you see on the top of the slide? The system, and you've heard it called Everbridge, that is the software provider. We like to try to use the word emergency notification system just in case we ever switch providers. But we've been with Everbridge for many years, well over a decade. We don't have any intention of changing it, but if you hear the word emergency notification system, or if you hear the word Everbridge, we're talking about the same software that alerts you guys, whether it's to your phones or email or so on and so forth, and I'll go over that in a second. The system is designed and used to alert citizens and people in the area to take action or prepare to take action. The messages and the requests for messages are initiated from a public safety personnel, usually in the field, meaning a law enforcement officer, a firefighter, search and rescue, but sometimes in these situations where there's a known burn scar and a known risk, the request might come from OEM, which our office and their office are literally across the hall from each other. We all cohabitate in the same building. It's important that everybody understands that the callback feature and sending out emergency notifications is a tool, and it doesn't replace being aware of your surroundings and in order to take personal action. So if anybody feels unsafe with whatever they're seeing around them, we suggest you take personal action. Don't wait for our call, is the best way to say it. Citizens can sign up. Anybody can sign up. And here are the ways to do it. You've heard the word Everbridge. There was a link that Andrew threw into the chat that is that'll get you to our direct page. And here's another way, but they're all funneling to the same place. I like to show the Boulder OEM webpage and at least mention that, because you can sign up for our alerts by clicking the red button that says emergency sign up on the bottom left, or sorry, the bottom right corner of the photo in the slide. You can also go to the link that Andrew provided. They all get you to the same place, but if there's information that's updated for any kind of major event, you could also find it here on Boulder OEM's webpage. When a citizen signs up for an account, you create a profile. And in that profile, you are essentially can put in up to 5 different locations. And I'll give you an example. So for example, and I'm jumping around my slide a little bit, but it's the second major bullet point. But so for example, my home is in unincorporated Boulder County. My work is in the city of Boulder. My wife is a teacher at a school, and one of my kids is at daycare in another place. I can put all 4 of those locations in, and if there's ever an emergency alert for any of those locations, I will get it. And when I get it, I can get it to voice, meaning a landline or a cell phone. I can get it a text, I can get an email, and the system even can send you a fax if you still have a fax machine. So that is the opt-in or sign-up feature that I just mentioned on the, off of either the link that Andrew provided or BOCO 911 alert, which is what Greg mentioned, or the website, all funneled at the same place. The other option to get into the system is if you have a landline already. And when I say a landline, that's a CenturyLink line, formerly known as Quest, or a Comcast Xfinity cable phone. So if you have a landline, you are automatically in our system. If you sign up for one recently, you'll be loaded into the system. We do a load every quarter of each year. Once you're in the system, and if you've chosen to sign up and put in one of up to 5 different locations in Boulder County, and this is just for Boulder County residents, you can choose your preferred delivery method. So for example, if there's an emergency alert for my house, I can say I want it to call my phone first. And if I don't acknowledge that, I want it to text me. And if I don't acknowledge that, I want it to email me. All of that is configurable at your choice. And that is what the automated delivery contact paths means on that bottom of the slide. So how do we as a dispatch center decide where to send it to? We have two options. We can draw a shape in the software. We can literally say, I want to draw a big circle and do this radius, or we can preload shapes into the software so dispatchers can easily access them and send messages. The hydrologist was speaking about these shapes that they're creating as they estimate the footprint of any kind of floodwaters. The pictures that you see on the slide are from after the 4 Mile fire when we were doing flood planning for this area. And they're basic shapes, but what they cover are the footprint of where the flood waters may go. And so we're doing the same thing with after the Calwood burn, and we're going to be uploading shapes that the hydrologists provide us so that we can alert those that are predicted to potentially be in harm's way. I'll talk a little bit about messages. So we're very purposeful with our wording, our language, and our messages. So we learned over the years that we try to not to use the word evacuate in a flood situation unless we actually want you to get up and leave your house. The reason why is because a lot of people think about evacuation of I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to pack my stuff, and I'm going to drive away. And as you heard, I think it was Greg mentioned that most of the deaths that we have in any kind of floodwaters are due to people driving away and in vehicles. Many times the safest thing is actually to go outside and climb to higher ground. So we're trying to use very purposeful language when we send messages so people know exactly what to do, because it can be a scary time when you get our alerts. We have a number of types of messages. So we have an advisory message that is an information type of message that we may send out just to let the public and the citizens know that something is happening or something may be happening. We have the word evacuation, like I mentioned before, usually used in fires, is to get up and leave the area. Shelter in place, we want you to stay where you are, and we would give you specific direction. Climb to higher ground, which I just mentioned, which is maybe the safest thing in a flood situation of just walking out your back door and climbing up the hillside. And lastly, we also have missing person type messages, which we use on occasion. We also have different levels of messaging. We have warning and order. We used to use pre-evac, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about that at the end of why we made some changes. But we now use the word warning and order. Warning is if you get a warning message, we want you to prepare to take action and actually get up and go if you feel that's best for you. And an order means you need to do this now, immediately take action. And lastly, we have an all clear. Anytime we send a message, we're going to follow up when public safety officials feel it is safe to go back to normal, your normal lifestyle, and we'll send an all clear message. And my last slide, the system, our emergency notification system, or the Everbridge system, also has built-in automated weather alerts. If you've opted in with 1 to 5 different locations, and the National Weather Service issues either a tornado warning or a flash flood warning, the emergency notification or Everbridge system will also send that message. So if you have a cell phone listed in the system for a specific address, you're going to get it from us too. You may also get it from the wireless emergency alert that automatically goes out through the National Weather Service. Those may be what you might have seen as an Amber Alert, that type of message that comes to a cell phone. Those are less targeted and they're more of cell phone tower based, but getting it twice or 3 times to us is a good thing. And because these things don't happen very often, and we'd rather overwarn if we have that opportunity. That's all I've got, Andrew, unless we have any questions.
Thanks, Steve. Looks like we do have one question in the chat for you. The question is, oops, it disappeared on me.
Oh, sorry, I might have done that.
That's all right. See if you can pull it up as well. What if you live?
I can ask it if you want, Andrew.
Great, thank you, Kristen.
Okay, so Stephen, my question is, so people who live in Larimer County, for example, Blue Mountain area, that we have a Larimer County address, but in an emergency, we're going to be evacuating through Boulder County. where would you recommend they put in as an address so they are getting alerts for Boulder County, even though they're not quite there?
Kristen, thank you very much for asking this question, because there is, being on the border of our county, especially being within Lyons Fire Protection District, but you're in Larimer County, it's a little bit of an anomaly. First thing is sign up for both emergency notification systems. So Larimer County also uses Everbridge, but go to Larimer County's website and sign up with theirs, and then also go to the links that we talked about and sign up for ours. The Blue Mountain community, being that it's in Lyons Fire District, is actually included, or may be included, in messages from our center. When I talked earlier, I mentioned that this is just for Boulder County residents and Boulder County only, although we are the primary dispatch center for Lyons Fire. So what we've done is actually expanded the availability for any citizen within 5 miles of our border, which captures all of Lyons Fire Protection District, can sign up for ours. We will not have your landline data automatically loaded into our system, but you can opt in with your Blue Mountain area address, with your landline and your cell phone and your email and text, all the above, and you'll get, if your house is in the footprint of an emergency notification that we send, you will get it. But I encourage everybody, if you're on the Larimer County side of the board or the county line, sign up for both. We partner with Larimer County all the time, and we make sure that if we're sending notifications, they know about ours and we know about theirs. We did that a lot during the few fires that came down from the north, and the one that came over the Continental Divide. But yeah, sign up for both. Does that answer your question, Kristen?
Yes, it does. And I have a second one.
Sure.
When an order is issued, one of the questions we had in the fire was, if I leave, and it's at that time it was a pre-evacuation. If I leave, can I not go home? Like for the people who are on Lyons Park Estates, they were freaked out about that.
So it's going to be situationally dependent, and that type of information on whether you can go back or be escorted back is really going to be dependent on what's happening. If we give you an order to leave, the best thing to do is going to be to grab your medications, grab anything that you're going to need to live outside of your home, because we won't be able to tell you exactly when you're going to be able to come back, but grab the things that you absolutely need, especially meds.
Kristen, on the order, the answer is you're probably not going to be allowed back because there'll be restricted access. If you're leaving under the warning, which is giving you some time, that's saying if you, in the next 1 to 3, 4 hours, you're probably going to get an order potentially. So start packing, be ready to go. Moment's notice. If you chose to leave during that, which some people may do because they have mobility issues or they have animals, or they just feel like I'm not feeling confident around being here, and we're still under a warning level, you would have the ability to move back and forth, provided there's not operational necessity to close a road down for firefighting, which could be the other factor in that sort of, it's not really an order yet. I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and these things can change very quickly. So animals and pets and medications are definitely the most important things to grab.
Great. Any additional questions for Steve?
How are the rain gauges and stream flow gauges in place?
I can talk about that, but Ron, specifically, yes, we do have rain gauge coverage. Just had that conversation today about the necessity to add additional stream gauges, and I'll share some advances that have been made around radar, which drives down the necessity to have the rain gauges for us to do assessments on the likelihood of what type of rainfall event we're going to have.
Good.
Steve, there's also one more question from Charla has a question. Can we sign up for an address within the town of Lyons or along the highway, not in our own property?
Yep, absolutely. So you can have up to 5 addresses anywhere in the county or within that 5-mile buffer that I discussed. You can sign up for an address. You can actually put in GPS coordinates too. So if there's not a physical address for the parcel or property that you're wanting to be notified, you can figure out the GPS and throw it into the system. That'll work also.
Great. Any additional questions for Steve? All right, our last presenter for the night is Mike Chard with the Boulder Office of Emergency Management.
Okay, let me bring up my file. And how are we looking? Looking good, Andrew?
Looking good.
All right, great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Like Andrew said, my name is Mike Chard with Emergency Management. Real quick, here's why we're here tonight. We had a burn scar. The arrows kind of point out the exit points for the risks that we're talking about. And it's basically some debris flows and some slop, some discolored water is kind of how that hazard's defined. And then anything from some lighter to heavier potential for some flooding. The piece that we're worried about is the side going towards Left-Hand Creek, and the risk is less coming onto the St. Vrain. What's important to talk about is really what's at the heart of the matter here. This is what you're here about, probably what's the risk, how often is this going to happen, where's it going to happen, how bad will it be, and then lastly, how long is my life going to be impacted by this? So let's talk about the risk. You're going to see some discolored water and some debris in the St. Vrain River. As you heard also from the hydrologist, geologist, the debris flows are going to stay kind of contained in that canyon area. Low risk there. The flooding, you heard 5 to 6 times greater risk. Those can be a little bit intimidating, but we're talking somewhere in the neighborhoods of the flow out of this area. Prior to this was like, I think 50 CFS, and jump in here if you have the exact numbers, but we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 250 to 400 additional CFS, cubic feet per second, that's going to be going into the South St. Vrain. That river, we know a lot about. We've been watching this stuff for a while. About 1,300 CFS down at the confluence starts making people nervous in Lyons. So that means that even spring runoff, we do about 350 CFS out of the dam there when it's releasing. So there's about a capacity of that 800-900 CFS coming off that South St. Vrain. So, if we're not close to that from a runoff perspective in there, even you add that in there, because many times it's running in maybe 500-600, there's still capacity in that river to absorb some of the storm runoff that's going to be coming off this burn scar. So we have some knowns about the behavior of the river that we're going to be watching and that you're living on. How often is this going to happen? When I did the 4 mile burn, we did some stats over 20 years. I'm going to work with Weather Service on this, but generally the 3/4 inch thresholds that we're talking about, if you average them out, maybe a couple times a year, there's going to be a storm in the area that might create or generate a flash flood warning based around that hazard level. But it's got to hit the right spot. So, talking moderate to low. There's going to be a lot of low level stuff that's going to hit. You're going to see that happening, 1/2 inch rainfall, maybe 5 to 10 times a year. 1/4 inch rainfall, obviously a lot more frequent. But those are things that are going to move some things around, create some discoloration, move some slop around. Maybe you'll see some higher flows in culverts or some bounce in the river. But you'll notice some things that may be intimidating, but they're not a bad risk. It's going to happen in the South St. Vrain. It's going to run down into town and out, to the east. And if we get a high flow rainfall of 3 inches or more, we don't really have a good feel what that's going to generate off of this, but that's why we hired some people that are going to help us understand that more so we can understand the risk. And then we have a better idea of, where will it happen if it's that high level, which really is a very, low frequency event. And then how bad will it be? Well, like I said, it's going to be range from nuisance probably most of the time. So we want you to be looking for things like, culverts building up debris, sediment, so that, they lose capacity, or, drainages. Try to work if you're on private land to maintain those. Don't let them build up to where they can create a cumulative problem and then become an overtopping situation. And then for how long, really, this is getting through the next couple of years. So we saw this in 4 Mile. next couple of years, things get a lot more stabilized with that growth. And kind of what you heard Greg say, get some low frequency moisture in the area. That's good, promotes growth, anchors in some of these soils, helps bounce back a bit. Year 3, 4, the flood risk is still there. The debris stuff, really, we saw this, it really changes quite a bit. By year 5, things are starting to look more stable. And then it goes on, you'll see a little bit elevated flood risk for a while longer, up to 10 years perhaps or more, just because if the trees don't grow back, there's some, like you heard people talk about, the interruption of the canopy, but you don't have that real big, sort of slip and slide effect where it's just everything's running right off like blacktop. So that's kind of the future. That's the story. So there's things we can do that can really help us out. Starting with number one, we've got experience handling. This is not our first rodeo. The 4 Mile fire created some real dangerous flooding, 1/4 inch debris flow stuff. It was low levels, even below thresholds that we see on this fire. People, large numbers of people living at the bottom of canyons. We developed a lot. And Ron, to your question of the rain gauges, the rain gauges are kind of from that era where we needed to have a lot of rain gauges because the radar wasn't as well developed. I'm going to rely on Greg here to kind of fill in the gaps here. But, since 2010, when this fire hit, we've had massive developments and improvements in radar to where the meteorologist calling us up can actually make an estimate of the intensity of rainfall. We're also making some investments. We had a call this evening, develop a gauge-adjusted radar grid system across the area, which is like placing a rain gauge almost every measuring point across the burn scar to help us really do estimates on what we're seeing in intensity and outflow from that storm. So the rain gauges help verify, but we're taking action and making decisions around warning you or being able to assess risk way before those rain gauges even pop now. And that's what we didn't have in 2010. So the technology, the maturity of our severe weather program, we work very closely with the Weather Service. We are an interface with the first response community. We're working with your fire chief, with your town manager to make sure that they're brought in and understand that when we call and we start asking for things and sharing information, they know what to do. Andrew's been running a plan that helps us, operationalize things if it gets bad. You've got a lot of mitigation efforts going on, the parks and open space, the watersheds involved. So we didn't have many of these things when we started in 2010. So we were making it as we went. We were behind the power curve. So we have the benefit of all that learning. We're applying those lessons, and we've developed infrastructure since then to really make this safer. Your personal preparedness stuff is important. I'm going to just leave this. You'll have this in the slide. These are things we're looking at, though. How do you get your warning is the big one. Making sure you have a weather radio, you got your alerts turned on your smartphone, you're signed up like you heard Steve talk about. All those things are critical, and really have a plan. That's the most important thing. And then can you just hang out for a while? And if 3 to 5, there's some of these we talk about have supplies for 3 to 5 days. Sometimes that can be challenging. Look, we want to get you warned. We want to get you out of harm's way and have a plan for you to help reconnect with your family. And then if you're having difficulties or you have some mass care or support needs, we've also got a very, very capable human services, community services, mass care function in our emergency management program that can provide for human service needs very, very quickly, and it's very responsive. So, we can provide some support there. Resiliency is important in these things. Knowing your neighbor, being able to pool the community resources in your community is what's going to get you through things. As you all know from the flood, Lyons was carved up into many different islands with the flood, and you were stranded by neighborhoods. And hearing the stories of people banding together and sharing resources and supporting one another are really stories of resiliency. So, you have a lot more experience. You lived it. There's community knowledge and hopefully still that ability and community capability to do that. I'm not seeing that being needed all the time, but, it's just nice to know that you have that capacity as a community if things do end up being a little more severe. These are the mechanisms that we have to warn you. There's sirens in town. We have the Everbridge, the opt-in piece Steve talked about. Those are very important. There's also a keyword push that we can help with. One of the big things we've developed over, it's not just warning you or getting you an order to get out, but also how do we keep information flowing to you so you know what's happening and when things are getting back to normal, you can get back home. And if you want impact assessments of how bad is it or how good is it, to be able to stay connected with you after we push you out of your house and let you go to either our websites or you're getting informations on social media That's important. We also have IPAWS, which is Integrated Public Alert Warning System, which gives us access to emergency alert, no weather radio, and WIA. But Greg's group's running that. We're just going to be probably supporting the WIA with information, type of information, but we're not going to be operating these primarily like we would be in a wildfire, because as you heard Greg say, he's the warning authority. We're here to fill in the gaps around that at the local level, which is what Everbridge and the sirens kind of do. It just adds additional warning capability. We've already talked about this with Steve. I just want to highlight why we're using not pre-evac or voluntary evacuation. The social science around that is that those things create expectations that perhaps it isn't as bad, or that there's going to be an expectation that we're going to call you back and let you know when it gets bad. And that has created delays. And you heard Greg talk about flash flooding. Time is important. So we want to really stress the highlight that if you're getting a warning, it's time to start packing and be ready to go in a moment's notice. And if you do have some of those mobility issues, or you have animals, even large animals where you need extra time, this is really your time to go. And when you get that order, which means climb to safety order, or you get an evac order, that is no packing. It is, you have to leave now, otherwise bad things can happen. So we just want to really make sure you're clear on what that is. Now, how I see that going in reality is you're going to get a flash flood warning. There's not going to be a lot in between on this. If there's something that's a developing, escalating situation, it's going to be us pushing out a climb to safety order on the heels of that flash flood warning going out by the National Weather Service. So Boulder OEM is a place to go. It's our website. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook. When the EOC activates, Andrew's in charge of that capability. He's going to be bringing in our PIOs who open up and in the EOC and start really pumping a lot of information into these three capabilities. So it's a good source to go to once you get a warning or an order that you're trying to find more information. It's on our website here. You'll see our website up in the left-hand corner. We have emergency updates. You click on that, it takes you in to a thread there where it's just, all the updates are going in. They automatically load into our Twitter and Facebook account. Down below is where you can find a place to go to, find emergency message signups, that BOCO alert to get into the system Steve was talking about. On our page, you'll see at the top in our menu there's emergency preparedness. You click on this, you can find an emergency preparedness guide. Talks about all the many risks or hazards we have in the county, along with them in Spanish if people need to have that in translation. Sorry about that. I thought I pulled that out. But just to give you an idea on the radar, so we've made investments in some of the technology we have. We have a lightning software capability. Soon there will be a burn scar reflected to show the Calwood. And it's important because we will track the storms and look at the trajectory. But whenever I get lightning, it tells me I have a developing thunderstorm and I'm getting something that may bring intensity. These lightning rings detect that and they send an alert to Andrew and I. And we basically then would know to go to our portable, now our smartphones, and bring up a radar in the moment and do an assessment. We're getting calls from Greg's group. So we have a really good tight relationship to know what's going on. And then we'll look at the radar and we'll see sort of these images and start doing threat assessment. And you can see we're able to look at the vectors of where storms are heading and the speed by which they're moving. So we just have a lot of ability to do data that we didn't have a long time ago that we're able to apply to this. So the chance of is less than it was back then that we're going to miss something. But more importantly, we're able to make better decisions around alerting you so that we don't have a lot of false positives. So we're not making it to where you're hearing a lot of noise, that when we do contact you, it's meaningful and it's intentional. We still have our rain gauges, so we're able to track all of those things that are related to the data so we can confirm what we're anticipating in radar. But we're calling and making decisions long before these things pop and way before stream gauges bounce. Because we're kind of late to the dance if we're waiting for those things. And lastly, these are the many things that we're doing right now. There's a lot of work going into it. We're bringing in stakeholders, your fire chief. We're making sure our response plans are together. We want to make sure you're engaged and that you see what's happening. We're evaluating our systems, making investments in it. We're going to schedule more engagement. This is not a one and done. We really want to know where you are on things, what you need from us. We don't want to come in here and say, we have all the answers. So if there are things that are creating worry or anxiety, please let us know. We'll see if we can do something about it. If there's a need you have, tell us so we can go to see if we can create a capability around it to address it. And that's all I have. And thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. And I hope this gives you a little scale of what we're dealing with. It's something to be paying attention to, but it's not something you should be freaking out about. I think that the risk is lower on that side, and there's great capacity within the St. Vrain River to absorb the runoff. And I think if you're watching it, we're watching it, we're going to be okay in the end. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. I'll open it up to any questions for the panel. All right. Well, with that, just a reminder, we did record this tonight, so it will be available for others. We'll post that on the BOCO Calwood Fire Recovery website and make it available, a link available there. Like Mike mentioned, feel free to reach out to Boulder OEM if you have additional questions. That would be myself, or mostly myself. And thank you, everyone, for or Director Char.
You can call me too.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
want
right.
to put you out there on your own.
But feel free to reach out to us, and really appreciate everybody coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
you.
Good night, all.
See you, Greg.
See you, Greg.
See you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Hey, I didn't
Dr.
ask,
Ben.
Hey, Ron.
I did not ask a question. I couldn't get my thing unmuted, but
Oh, go for it.
no, just a question. The fire chiefs, and the fire chief at Lyons,
Mhm.
they're integrated into all this, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And are they any more local to all this wonderful work that's been accomplished? Nothing was mentioned about the fire department tonight.
Yeah, we did mention that, Ron, that they're involved in the operational planning. I may have just sped past that. But Andrew, I'll let him talk about it. But Andrew, why don't you give an update just on the operational plan you put together and who's been involved in that?
Yeah, so we have been reaching out to Lyons Fire Department. They just had a transition in the chief, and I think maybe that's where they missed tonight. That a new chief just came on. We've been in contact up until last week with Chief Pischke, who was the previous chief, and we'll do a better job of reaching out to the new chief to make sure he's involved. But their public information officer has been part of the process, has looked at our plan. We've had discussions. They were invited tonight. And so they have been part of the process. They weren't here tonight, and I'm not sure why, but we'll follow up with them.
Oh, thank you. It's good to know.
Yeah, we're definitely engaged and have a strong relationship with them. With their new chief coming on in the era of COVID, it's probably not as strong as it would have traditionally been, meaning that we'd have had coffee multiple times, but hopefully we'll be having, that'll happen soon enough. So,
Well, thank you. Nice job tonight.
okay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
sir.
Ron.
All right.
And let me end on my recording.